All right. As we continue our series on Drive to Survive, we're on episode number 4. And this is Carlos Sainz episode. It's really all about Carlos Sainz and when he was told that Lewis was coming to Ferrari, and the scene starts out, the episode starts out with a headshot of Carlos and in his Ferrari outfit. And, he's looking kind of dejected because he's gotten the news that he's going to be leaving Ferrari. Everyone at Ferrari loves Carlos. Carlos is the ultimate professional. He's a nice person. He's a good driver. He gives great feedback. He gives, as we've seen, great feedback during the race. But like he says, and I'm going to put his interview up here for us all to look at.
I think if it would have been someone else, I would have taken a lot more longer to understand. But when you understand Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion and one of the best, if not the best in history, is going to replace you at Ferrari, and Lewis has decided to do his last part of his career in Ferrari, and you need to be one of the two drivers sacrificed for that to happen, I understand. I also understand it was never going to be Charles. Charles has been the project of Ferrari ever since he's been a junior driver. He's been the center of the project for many years. I arrived to Ferrari more as a substitute of Vettel, almost a bit, not by chance, but obviously earning my place, but circumstantial rather than Charles that has been there forever. So I understood I had to be in a way the one being replaced, and yeah, I understood it from the beginning. I just obviously didn't agree so much at the time, but hey, you end up agreeing and you end up getting on with it.
If it was anybody other than Lewis, he wouldn't be able to understand it. But when you have a 7, some people say 8 times world champion coming to your team, I mean, that's a good compliment, I think. I mean, it's not like, it was Esteban Ocon taking his spot, or, it wasn't one of the young kids taking his spot. It was like Lewis, who they gave a big contract to. And once Ferrari announced the news, they made all that money back that same day in the stocks. So, and plus a lot more, to be honest, like billions of dollars. But anyway, this episode is all about Carlos Sainz. And we're going to talk about that episode here at...
Yeah, America F1. America F1. It's a golden run. America F1.
And so, how did I, so far this is the 4th episode, right? The first episode's kind of what everything's happening, that year before, which would be 2023, how things started out for Christian Horner, all of his controversies. They talked about Lewis going to Ferrari, it was just like a kind of in total of what's to come episode, if that makes any sense. And the second episode was Lando, and you can go back and we recapped Lando's episode, which so far to me was the best episode so far, between 1, 2, 3, and 4 right now. And then the third episode was Lewis leaving Mercedes, but it had nothing to do with Lewis. It was all about George and all about, how the team looked at it and how Toto Wolff viewed it. And then at the end, they showed Kimi Antonelli, and they tried to give a little bit that Carlos would even think about, or that Mercedes was thinking about going with Carlos, but we all know that was never the option. The best option would have been for Carlos actually to go to Mercedes or to go to Red Bull, but they didn't even really get into that this episode. They didn't get into that Carlos Sainz Sr. and Josh Verstappen don't really get along. And it was Josh Verstappen that was behind the scenes saying that no way, no how is Carlos coming to this team. Like he's making that decision, or he's saying that, because remember, Carlos and Max were teammates at Toro Rosso. We all remember that, I hope. And Carlos did very well against Max. And I don't know if Max obviously is the world champion, best driver on the grid right now, obviously, right? But the competition that he's had since he's won these world titles, he hasn't had much. Checo, and now it's going to be Liam Lawson. It doesn't kind of compare to, other world champions. Maybe compare us to Schumacher's world championships, because he didn't also have really that much competition. But it doesn't compare to Hamilton's. It doesn't compare as far as who their teammates are, right? I mean, if we even go back to Senna and Prost, it doesn't compare to something like that. So this episode about Carlos, they have Williams, with James Valls, who obviously ended up being the winner and getting Carlos to sign. But they had that, and they showed how Williams, the Williams history and how they're moving forward, because their team was behind the 8 ball, so to speak, because, it wasn't a modern team before James Valls got there. And he complained about how, how unmodern all their systems were. And that for him, he has to fix all and bring them up to date for Williams even to compete in the modern era. So then they had the Alpine part, and I wrote this down because I can't remember the guy's name, because he was only at Alpine, for half a second. And his name was Alessandro Alumni Brava. He's a lawyer manager, and he was the team representative for Sauber, or Stake F1, Kick, whatever. And which is going to be the new Audi team next year. And Audi, they were talking about how, Audi's won in everything they've ever done, and Audi's won in all the different sports, and they're going to be, they're going to come with a lot of money. But that's down the road. It's not in 25, and it's definitely not in 26, maybe 27, 28, who knows? But a new team coming into Formula One, it's going to be some growing pains. It's going to take some time. So they had they had Williams, they had Stake F1, and then they also showed, Alpine, which, was Renault, which was Benetton, blah, blah, blah. But then they had Flavio Briatore, and they did a whole segment on him. And, if you know his background, right, we know some people, there's a love-hate. Remember, he was banned from Formula One. Okay, he was banned. He's from Crashgate, how many gates did Flavio? Let's look. He had a lot of gates. He had a lot of gates. Let's look at all the gates. 2007, he had Spygate. 2008 was Crashgate. 1994 was the launch control controversy. He was banned for life. Even some of the principals are like, yeah, he's the best principal ever. And then other principals are like, well, he's a cheat. And then they had Christian Horner when they talked about, oh, well, Flavio, he's not going to give him a lot because Carlos is worth a lot of money. Flavio's not going to do that. And then Christian in the episode alludes to, it was just a snippet, but he alludes to that Flavio would try to cheat him somehow. So that's the thinking. If Christian's going to say that out loud with cameras, Lord knows what he's saying behind the scenes, and Lord knows what some of the other principals. But Flavio seemed to be enjoying himself. They asked him, well, why is he coming back? And he says, hey, I don't need it. I got all the money. I don't need this stuff. I don't need to come back. He's coming back for the love of the sport. Pretty gregarious guy. I didn't even know. I knew he dated Heidi Klum, but I didn't know he dated Naomi Campbell. And he's big, he was a big playboy. He was dating all these models and such. And, seems like a gregarious guy, and I hope he makes Alpine better, because the more competition we have in Formula One, the better it is for everybody. The better the races are. So I wish him all the luck. But they try to give this thing where they set it up where Carlos was going to come in and sign with Williams, but he never shows up. They have the pin, they have the paper there, and they're waiting, and he's 20 minutes late. James Walls is sitting there, the secretary's sitting there like, where's he at? He's going to be late, and he never shows up. And then they get a call saying that, well, Carlos, he's taking time making his decision. He wants to evaluate each and other team. And I think these were two separated segments that they spliced up. And what we're knowing, and if you watch Drive to Survive, and this is the 7th season. So what you'll realize very quickly, if you're a Formula One fan, or if you do, you go to the races, or if you follow Formula One, what you'll soon notice, and it'll take you maybe 10 minutes of watching, whatever year or whatever season you watch, to know that they splice things that happen in one race with things that happen at another race to try to make some controversy, to try to make some drama. Remember, people, it's a TV show, okay? It's a TV show. It's showing you some of the things that happen behind the scenes, but remember, it's not showing you everything. It's not showing you the best of everything. And quite frankly, a lot of stuff is made up just to make for good television. Now, as I've told you before, if you haven't watched any of the recaps we've done so far, I watch it for the cinematography. To me, cinematography's excellent. When they show the cars, it's awesome. The colors, awesome. The locations, awesome. Formula One, the locations, Monaco, Montreal, Miami, Vegas, Japan. All the scenery is always awesome at Formula. If you've never been to a race, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. The ambiance is fantastic. Unlike any other racing series, in my opinion. Okay. Now, the thing about Carlos going to Williams. Now, remember his dad, he won the Dakar, and he races also, and he races for Audi, if you didn't know that. And so there was all this this is last year, and people were saying his best, even we were saying on our show, the best place probably for him would have been Audi, because, well, they got a history of winning. It's going to be a works team. They'll have their own engine, and so to speak. And so it seemed like a marriage that would make more sense. But what you hear, and it's only for maybe 25 seconds of the show, you have Lando Norris, and Zach Brown comes in, and they're talking about Carlos signing. And Lando says, and I don't know if people caught this, but I did, because I paid attention. For the show, I have to take notes. So Lando says, it's a short contract. It's going to be for Williams. He'll be there short term, and Audi long term. That's what he said. I caught that. And he said that he got that from Carlos. So the inference is, or it's not even the inference. Lando said it. Lando said it. I heard it. I heard it in my ears. You heard it too. Go watch it. But we're doing the recap in case you can't watch it. Okay. So he said that. I knew this from the start. In Carlos's contract, it says that if there's ever a top team, but I thought it was Mercedes, back to Ferrari or Red Bull that came a calling, he could leave Williams and go to that team. So there must be another team in there, just going by what Lando says. So it must be Audi's also in that contract, saying that in a couple years, if this doesn't work out, hey, I can go to Audi. And think about this. Let's go. Let's take it. Let's blow it up and go big picture. Remember, our buddy Franco Colapinto is on a 5-year loan, right? Right? You know that, right? He's on a 5-year loan to Alpine, which doesn't mean that Jack Doohan, poor guy, he's in this episode for a half second too. Jack Doohan talking about, because remember, if you guys remember last year when Carlos was making a decision where to leave, everybody else was at a standstill. Like there was literally no movement until Carlos made his decision. Like they asked Joe, like, what are you doing next year? And he goes, I don't know, ask Carlos. And then they had Jack Doohan, like, you know, talking to him. And he was like a reserve driver, remember, last year. And so he's like, I don't know. So everybody was waiting to see what Carlos was going to do. And people around the paddock, if you go back into Formula One last year, they were getting kind of, I'm going to say antsy would be the best term to say. On the other spectrum would be pissed. People were pissed, like, come on, man, make a decision so I can get my life together, because everybody was waiting on Carlos because he was the biggest property from last year. Now, why didn't he go to Mercedes? Well, obviously, I think they probably had a meeting. Toto had a meeting, and I'm sure he said, well, we got Kimi Antonelli. I don't want to miss out on what could be, there's no guarantees in Formula One, but what could be the next Max Verstappen, a young guy who comes up and just crushes, right? So for Mercedes, in my opinion, that's probably the better move. Kimi Antonelli's crushed it everywhere he's gone. When you look at his onboards and you look at his data, it's off the charts. The guy's a wonder kid. It is what it is. And he has a great, maybe you don't know this, but he has a great photographic memory of, he can name the times that he's done lap times from almost every race. Like if you could tell him a race and you can ask him what his best lap time from that race was, and he can give it to you. And they actually have a shot of him and Ollie Berman in a room, in the debrief room, you know, when they go back and they start looking at data after the race. And for a segment, they were asking Kimi about certain races that he's had and what was a lap time. And they had a computer. He would name it. They would look at the computer. And for mostly, he was either right on by the millisecond or he was off by like a tenth or something. But he could recall that. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, ask me what I had for breakfast last week. I can't remember, you know. I mean, but this guy, hey, what did you? Oh, the court would like to know, you, Sherm Tillman, what did you have for lunch last Tuesday? Tuesday, that was the 4th of March. Can you recall? I'd be like, yeah, lunch, that was my wife's birthday, and for lunch, I have no, you know, I'd have no clue. But this guy can remember lap times from things he's done years ago. Amazing. Why wouldn't he go to Red Bull? We talked about that because Josh Verstappen didn't I guess he doesn't get along with Carlos Sainz Sr.'s dad, and you remember they were together at Toro Rosso, and even though I think Carlos gets along with Max, the dads don't get along, and I think it would be maybe too much competition for Max as far as winning a world title, because Carlos is definitely going to win some races and take some points off of Max, and Red Bull's dynamics don't really allow for that. They don't want that. Max is the #1 driver, other guy's #2 driver, that's it. So the other team, well, obviously it's Ferrari, and he's leaving Ferrari. So where else would you go, right? Williams, Alpine, Kick Sauber. No, not going to go to Haas. Well, you get the Audi coming. So you see where you get to, like, well, where could he go? So Williams, when you think about it, is probably the best of all those choices when you take away the top teams. I mean, Alpine would be a good, but let's be honest. Before the end of last year, Alpine's been pretty much a dumpster fire. Every year they fire so many people quit. You know, there's a lot of controversy. The engine hasn't been great. They're overweight. The aero hasn't been good. So there's been a lot of turmoil at Alpine, and I'm pretty sure Briatore will take care of all that because he's all about winning and all about the business, and he knows how to run a team. I mean, he's won 3 constructor championships, and he's won 4 overall drivers championships. So he knows what he's doing. There's no doubt about that. The cheating part, we won't talk about that, but he knows what he's doing. So for Carlos, I think Williams probably was the best choice, at least for now. And Carlos is 30, so he got some time still in Formula One. He's not like Fernando or Lewis, but he probably at least has another good 4 or 5 years, at least. And I hope longer because he's a good racer. But they also alluded to him maybe, you're going from Ferrari, you're competing for podiums and wins, and now you're going to Williams. And the only way Williams wins this year, and it would be a miracle, but it has to be like, a lot of crashes or a rainy race with a lot of crashes. They're just not going to do it on out-and-out pace. I mean, what you saw in preseason testing, Carlos Sainz had the fastest time in preseason testing, but it's preseason testing. There's teams that are not showing everything. There's teams doing specific programs, and there's always some outlier team that everybody goes, oh, well, look at them. They're going to be great this year, and they never turn out to be that great that year. So you could take testing out of it. To conclude, is this, out of the episodes so far, is this more true to life? Because is it not contrived in television? I would say that this episode, out of the ones we've seen so far in season 7, this is episode 4 that we're recapping, probably is closest to what actually happened in real life. Because the other ones were edited. The last one, number 3, when they were talking about Lewis, they tried to make George the story of the British Grand Prix when it was Lewis's first win in 2 years. Obviously, that was the story, but since they couldn't get interviews with Lewis, they kind of had to shuffle it and make it more about George, but it really wasn't. It was all about Lewis. So, and then the Lando episode, like they try to have this like battle or, controversy between Lando and Max. And there was, as far as the racing goes, but they're still friends. They've been friends for a long time. And I think they compartmentalize it. Like our friendship's our friendship. And then what happens on the track is professional. And we just do that. And we don't really let that creep over into the friendship. But remember that Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton were friends forever. And then 2016 crushed all that. Now, hopefully they still talk because they live in the same building from what I know in Monaco. So hopefully that has subsided. But I was thinking, now that I brought up Nico Rosberg's name, what is Drive to Survive missing? Nico Rosberg. And why do I say that? I love Nico Rosberg as a commentator. I do. I think out of all the commentators, I think him and Jensen Button are the best. I think they tell it kind of like it is. They're not spinning like a lot of the network or Sky Sports or whatever broadcast you're watching when you watch F1. They kind of spin things, and you could tell they have their favorites. And what I like about Nico is he kind of just gives it, one, from a driver's perspective. But 2, he doesn't get into the storyline spins that they're trying to promote. He just tell it like when Christian Horner came in and was talking about trying to pump Max up and then denigrate Lewis, and then Nico came right back at him and said, "Well, no, because Lewis had those same problems and he did just as well." So he'll come out and because he knows it from a driver's perspective, so they can't BS Nico and they can't BS Jensen. Now, a lot of the other pundits, well, they can kind of BS them because they never drove. They weren't in Formula One, right? So I think that's what Drive to Survive is missing, Nico Rosberg. And hopefully in season 8, if the show keeps going, they'll invite Nico Rosberg. And if they do, Nico, remember, you heard it here first. I'm the one who's promoting you being on the show, which I think would be a lot better if you were. Because they're probably losing, well, they're not probably, they're losing Will Buxton because, Will went to IndyCar. He's not commentating for Formula One anymore. So he will be in IndyCar. So they'll lose that person that kind of gives the commentary on everything that's happening, and I think that should be Nico Rosberg going forward. So this has been the recap of episode 4, season 7 of Drive to Survive. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll post some stuff up there so you can watch it and we'll talk and see what I'm talking about. Also, if you're new to our channel, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. We're also on Spotify and Apple Music and wherever you get podcasts. And with that, keep on racing, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing.
Stop participating. Stop participating, Star. Come on, twinkle, twinkle, baby. Twinkle, twinkle.